The reality is, they said like 6 to 8 weeks. I'm failing my goals and I'm failing my farm. I'm failing you guys even. How you doing this morning? Ow, Pablo, don't eat me. So it's been about 2.5 weeks since I broke my toe here working on the farm. And I know a lot of you guys have had questions about how I'm doing and how am I doing everything. And so figured in this video, I would just try to put together an update because I'm not gonna lie, these last couple of weeks have been rather challenging and I'm struggling and progress on the farm is falling farther behind. And my busted paw has a bit to do with it, but there are a few other issues I'm facing as well. Now you guys might be noticing that there's no large white farm dogs here to greet me this morning. And there's actually a very good reason for that. And that's because I've replaced my livestock guardian dogs with my livestock guardian goats, which is only half of a joke, but yeah, they've definitely really started to enjoy hanging out here in the front, and I'm letting them graze this side of the yard right now. And so that actually fences out the dogs just in a little tiny spot. And if anybody ever wonders, why do I have this top wire so precariously close to the way that I could walk through? This is a perfect reason for why that's important. All right, back up you goats. Come on, back up, out of the way. Hey, get out of the way. Ow, ow, ow. Do not try to sneak out, come on. Barney, Tilly, Lauren, no. Oh, no, 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 no. Oh. Hey, 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 hey. Hey, everybody back away. Hey, stop, don't eat the food. Stop, no, 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 no. Hey, 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 wait. Come back here, come back here. Lauren, come here. So yes, as I was saying, I've got the goats working down here. They're cleaning up this edge in this corner as we speak. You can actually just see even in the last week or so, they've made a pretty good impact, and I'll probably move them on to the next spot. At this point, I'm only giving the goats just a little bit of alfalfa each morning to just get them trained and continue to keep them trained to me and the bucket, because I'm finding it's the absolute easiest way to move some goats. Of course, if I give them the big bucket that they eat out of, they will still try to eat, all three of them eat at the same time together. But I definitely love these Goatiotuses. Barnacus, stay out of the food. Now in terms of the large white farm dogs though, they're right over here just on the other side of this fence. Like, hi Abby Dabby Doo. Good to see you, sweetie. How's it going? This side is goat yard. This side is bird and dog yard. Please, I'm trying to clean your bedding here. Excuse me, pardon me. I think the hardest part of my foot injury is the fact that it's now taking me twice as long to do pretty much everything. You know, I'm walking significantly slower. I can carry a lot less than I can usually carry. And all in all, just farm chores have become much more of a task than they were a couple of weeks ago. And that has some real basic challenges, like I just need to spend more time doing stuff. It's very frustrating and has kind of a mental tax. And if I was gonna talk about the hardest part about it all, I think it has been that. In order to let my body rest and let my foot heal, the most important and helpful thing I can do is keep off of it, keep it elevated, and not overtax it. And while the idea of completely not doing anything is pretty much impossible for me because I have animals and I have responsibilities, I do know that pulling back on some of my fall farm plans has been necessary. Like for example, I have a plan to turn that duck house into a new goat yard, and I haven't done anything with it yet. I'm deprioritizing projects and activities that don't need to happen at this very minute. And so for the time being, the Goatiotuses are still gonna call this home. And so in order to keep this area fresh and clean, I'm putting out fresh bedding every single day, making sure that it doesn't get too gross or poopy and scooping stuff up as I need to. But a lot of that goat manure sits underneath this straw, which is okay because with time, it'll just break down and compost, and yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. And I really only have to build some fencing here that'll be good for winter, so putting in some T-posts and putting up some wire fencing. And so, I don't know, I'm still optimistic that I'll get that issue addressed in the relatively near future. Oh look, it's Toby Dog and Abby Dog. Hi guys. Abby, don't steal Toby's thunder, and you know you don't want to touch this. I know, you're learning. Now, I know a lot of folks have questions about how's Abby doing with the chickens that I just put her with on a free-range basis over the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 days, and so I will also talk about that in a second. Okay, birds, where's the food time? Here, have some apple drops. So yeah, overall, Abby has been really good with the chickens. She doesn't try to play with them. She's doing exactly what she needs to do in terms of just treating them like scenery. Abby, leave it. She is starting to try to sample the chicken food more, which is kind of weird and she never did before. Even when you have bird chaos, she does a pretty good job of just trying to stay out. Abby, no, Abby, leave it. We're gonna just let the birds chill and we're gonna let you be a good girl. Yeah. So a lot of times, and I guess I got this comment on a recent video, folks will ask like you seem to pet Abby immediately after you scold her. And usually there is an edit immediately before that, which is a minute of me correcting her and redirecting her, and then telling her to sit, much like you see her doing right now, because I'm trying to train her to have that be her default behavior when she's around me and around the birds. Abby, what's the matter? Oh, you don't like Toby stealing your thunder? Hey, sit, sit, sit. Of course, she still gets a little accidentally energetic and then spook everybody. But the important thing is she isn't trying to play with them and she isn't causing problems anymore. All right, out you go, teenage chickens. Come on. I've also started to let the teenage chickens roam completely free at this point too, because they're getting big enough that it's almost crowded inside there, and so I'm letting them come out each day. I still lock them up here at night, and that's really more because I want to train them to the coop area, but they're definitely starting to wander around the farm more, which is a good thing. You know, one thing I have cut back on again in terms of limiting my farm activity was I was actually going to set up 2 different flocks. One that was all roosters and one that was all hens. I'm not doing it just because it's easier to take care of them this way. I'm still gonna butcher the roosters in, I don't know, probably about 3 or 4 weeks, but I'm just gonna keep them all together and separate them right before I butcher. As I eyeball it, I actually would guess that I probably have about 60% hens, which is kind of funny. Usually when you hatch them out yourself, it's a 50-50 chance of male or female, but my results skewed slightly this year. I think the last time I did this experiment, it was like 54% male, 46% female. In terms of who's a male, who's a female, so you see that white one that's up front here? He's definitely a cockerel. So is that gray one who's right up front there. So is that other white one that just came in. That white one in the back, she's a hen. All those gals back there are all hens. It's usually the roosters at this age who seem to try to grab all the food first, which is what you have going on here. Actually, she's a hen, the one that just snagged that piece of popcorn. Now, another project that I've had delayed has been, I had a plan to take a spring that's way back there about, I don't know, 1,300, 1,400 feet, and run a line to get to this pond so that it can both fill this pond on a regular basis, but then also provide winter water for my cattle. And so at first this summer, my work was delayed because of all the flooding that we had, and the weather and the water had made passing through the area where I needed to go almost impossible. But pretty much right around Labor Day, it seemed like things had dried out enough that I was able to start to get out there and start to look for the spring and start to measure how long the spring line needed to go. Now, one of the most important first steps is going to be figuring out the exact path that the black poly pipe, which is the piping I use to carry water, like how is that going to run through the trees, as well as figure out how much of that I'm going to actually need. And so I decided to take some mason's twine that was sold in like 500-foot reels and start to walk with it through the woods, going through what I thought was the most logical path. And I was able to kind of carve my way through the trees and figure out exactly where it needed to run. And it turned out it's about 1,300 feet from the spot I'm standing at right now to where that spring actually is. But one of the things that is most shocking to me as I've been going through the woods is just how much flood damage and impact we have. You know, I commented on this on a previous video, just in terms of the way the brooks have changed and the way the water flows changed throughout the property. But that fact became even more apparent as I started to explore the process of running the line through the cedar swamp. Back in like late July and early August, it was about 3 feet, 4 feet deep of water, and so I just didn't feel great about trying to tromp through all of that. Most of that water has subsided, and so even though it's really mucky and muddy, it's easier to get back and forth through there. Now, I know one question that folks are gonna have is, as I was back there, did Sir Porkington, who was that pig that we had who disappeared, was there any evidence that I saw of him back there as I spent, you know, days wandering through that forest looking for hydrant lines and figuring out where to put stuff and starting to prep stuff to actually make the spring run back here to the farm? And the answer is, well, Oftentimes it's very easy to mistake deer tracks for pig tracks. And so as I was walking through that forest and looking at the ground and looking for evidence of Sir Porkington, I found so many deer tracks that made me stop and wonder, am I actually tracking a pig? But pretty much every single time it turned out to be deer tracks and not pig tracks. And I shouldn't even say pretty much every single time. Every single time it happened. And as a base of comparison too, as I went through the area where the pigs were, there were some obvious pig tracks left over from the pigs that went to the slaughterhouse. I had like something very clear to compare them to, and they were definitely deer tracks, not pig tracks. And so at this point, I've got to say that pig foot remains very elusive. Uh-oh, you guys. It looks like somebody's got a secret duck nest going. I'm sorry, girl. I know you want to be a mama, but it is much too late in the season for you to try to have ducklings. Sorry, I know, it's disappointing. A nice little clutch of eggs here. I don't know if these are going to be dog safe or not. This is one of the downsides of not having the pigs. Like, the pigs would immediately get eggs like this, but I don't know. Wow, she's been working on this for a while. Or at least a couple of ducks have been. What I'll end up doing is I'll candle them tonight, and if they look undeveloped, I will give them to the dogs. If they look developed, I probably will just compost them. So yeah, Abby, I don't know if this is going to be in your dinner or not tonight. Only time will tell. You know, walking is definitely a challenge right now with my foot the way it is. It's really not like I can wear a boot or anything, because particularly at the time of day when I have to do the most walking and when I'm doing most of my walking for the day, it's usually out here in pasture in the morning and everything gets soaked. And if I had one of those like special shoes that I could wear like on my left foot, it would help keep my foot flat and not flex or bend, which is really where all the problems happen for me right now.
Because at this point, if my foot is flat, elevated as it is, I don't really feel anything at all. And if I'm walking on flat ground and keeping everything flat, it really isn't all that bad. The problem comes when I walk uphill or downhill or on stairs,
or do any sort of movement with my foot that has like a bending backwards or flexing or a flexing down. Like when that happens,
it is absolutely excruciating.
And yes, I'm finding moving and setting up the camera and actually shooting a video is making doing chores not just twice as hard, but 3 times as hard. Yeah, I'm just constantly having to walk back and forth to move the camera, which is why I have not been shooting as many videos either. Over the last 2 weeks, while I've had to deal with a couple of things and, you know, put attention to it, I've been almost migrating to winter work. So right now I am finishing, I guess technically what would be considered the second draft of The 8 Lives of Lil Barn Cat, which is my new book coming out this spring. And probably by like November 1st, I'm going to start writing the 3rd book. I don't exactly have the title of it yet, but it's going to be something along the lines of a book about Pablo Barn Cat. And so those are coming, and if I can't be out working on the farm, I'm finding that it's a good place to put my energy. But I will admit, I don't know, it all leaves me feeling very depressed and frustrated, and like I'm failing my goals and I'm failing my farm, I'm failing you guys even. And I know the right thing is to just slow down and let my body heal, but I'm really not good at that. And I don't know, it's a challenge, and I don't know. I just don't know. Full stop, I guess is the real answer. I don't know about you guys, but I can often find myself spiraling into like these like negative thought patterns where not only am I disappointed in myself or feeling bad because like I'm hurt, but then I start to like make that a moral judgment of myself, and I don't know, it's probably not good for anybody, but it is a thing that happens. And so I don't know, if somebody's out there watching this video and they're dealing with an illness or injury and feeling really frustrated by how they're limited, just know that yeah, I'm out here and I totally know how you feel, and I'm feeling very much like that myself, particularly over these last couple of weeks. And particularly as I had the bright idea to move my heifers up to this upper part of the pasture, because this is actually where they need to be grazing right now. Like I've got them back up here because I want them to graze down these rows before I bring them in for winter, and I'm keeping the lower rows clear for when I bring the other cattle down, so that even as we're starting to get into winter, I can actually stockpile graze with them for just a little bit and do it in a place where I can control them and manage them and make sure they have access to fresh water even in the deep freezing temperatures. Yeah, I don't know where Baby B or Alice Tokeless are right now. They're probably down on the other end, somewhere out in the mist. Like they go back and forth. They just moved up here, what was it, 2 days ago, I guess? So they're still getting used to everything, and there's still so much grass for them to eat. They're gonna rejoin their mothers late October, early November when I bring everybody in. What happens is in the summer months, I put the bull in with the cows so that he can impregnate them again. But then by like November 1st, I separate him out. And then I put my young heifers, who I kept separate because I didn't want them getting pregnant this year, I put them back in with their moms. And then next year, they will be out there with the cows and breeding with Macho Man Randy Savage. Now, for those of you guys wondering about the status of the spring project, I don't know. I started to run the poly pipe. I've got the poly pipe, like, I don't know, about 300 feet of it out there. I got probably about another 1,000 feet to go or so. I don't know if I'm gonna finish it before the snow starts to fly. I mean, I'd like to try to. I mean, honestly, as things start to freeze up, as long as there's not too much snow, it makes getting through there easier. I'm gonna keep trying to do it, but I'm also not gonna try to rely on it for my winter yard, which I've started to assemble, but have also put on hold too. The reality is, they said like 6 to 8 weeks is what I really need. That means I'm planning for 5. So basically 5 weeks of being injured and not being able to do things. And so, I don't know, the dates of when I record these videos are supposed to always get funky, but like basically I'm expecting that by like late October, I can be back out there doing basics, like not going crazy, but doing the stuff I need to do to really get the animals ready and set for winter. And so it should time out just right. There they are. There's Baby B and there's Alice B. Tokeless. I knew they were just on the other end and I couldn't see them because of the fog. As it just so happens, the cattle are out in the furthest corner of the pasture too right now. It's not really based on planning. That was just a function of where they were in the pasture rotation when I got injured. And for those wondering, no, I'm no longer riding my bike to come up to the pasture every day. I have to take the side-by-side. Just because on medical advice, they don't think the pedaling action is good for me, at least for right now. And so there's probably a strong chance I won't be able to ride around the farm much until, I don't know, the spring. I don't know, who knows? Hey, Kels! Come on, Kels! Fresh grass, come on! Hey, Kels! Come on, Kels! Fresh grass, come on! Hey, Kels! Come on, Kels! Fresh grass, come on! You know, it's a little bit funny, because I usually have like zero trepidation or concern as I'm moving the cattle in the mornings. But because of my foot injury, I also don't feel like I'm as mobile, and if I needed to like jump out of the way for some reason, I'm not nearly as capable. And so between that, as well as the fact that just even walking around here doing something as dumb as just stepping into a hole is what caused my injury in the first place. Like, all of that has me operating around the farm with extreme caution, not wanting to get myself hurt even more, because I'm definitely finding as you get hurt working on the farm, makes working on the farm really hard. Now, ordinarily, after even just doing these most basic farm chores, I would probably go inside and elevate and ice my foot for an hour just to like get it back to not being painful. But we still have one more task I got to do this morning before I can go inside. Oh no, I've got a swarm of baby chickens wandering the farm. How'd you guys get out? They probably just slipped underneath the gate. I hope you guys find your way back in today. Come on, back in, let's go. Everybody in, come on. So now, a few weeks ago, my really good friend Jessica Sowards from Roots and Refuge Farm was staying with us, and we had a really good time making apple cider. But in that video, number one, it's pretty obvious that I'm kind of limping along in it. But then number two, some of the tasks that I typically would do in a video like that, like show you guys how I make my apple tree seedlings, I just didn't have the energy for it. And so for like the last 2 weeks or so, I've had this bucket of apple pressing pulp just basically sitting in the barn. I haven't planted it yet. But it really is time for me to start spreading this pulp around. And this will become next year's apple trees. The good news about something like this is, as long as it doesn't develop a mold or a fungus, and heck, even if it does develop a mold and a fungus, it's really not that big a deal, because all you're doing is just taking your pulp and spreading it around on a bed. You can see it's just basically
wood mulch that I poured out into a bed right here. If you look at it very closely, you'll see that there's like apple seeds in this pulp. Like you can see, that apple seed will potentially sprout and turn into a little apple tree seedling by the springtime. What happens is it will start to sprout in the spring, they'll grow all spring and summer, and then come fall, there'll be like little sticks that I pull up. I actually have this year's apple tree seedlings right down there that I gotta go pull up in about 2 weeks. Like I actually just harvested my chestnuts, but I have all these like little beds scattered around the farm now that I use for starting tree seedlings. It's really easy to make tree seedlings this way. Now the two really important things to note when you're making apple tree seedlings like this is that number one, what you're gonna find is that the genetics of the seeds that came from the apples that I pressed are not going to be identical. Much like people who are mixing and matching two different types of DNA, that's what apples are doing, and so you're not going to always have the child very much like the parent. But the good news is that doesn't really matter, because when it comes to apple trees, what you can do is something known as grafting. Then usually what I'll do is just come in and give this a quick raking around, break out the clumps, mix in just a little bit of that wood mulch. The wood mulch actually has the advantage of helping suppress any grasses underneath here. When I came through with the tractor, I scraped off the sod, but you know, you'll still get weed seeds in there. And so generally speaking, the apple seedlings are going to outcompete anything that tries to grow around here. And so yeah, that's what a prepped apple tree seedling bed looks like. Now in terms of the apples that will produce, they probably won't be great eating apples. They might be okay cider apples. But generally when I take those apple seedlings and plant them on my farm, or when I sell them to other people and they plant them on their farms and homesteads, typically what you're doing with those wild apple seedlings is you're gonna graft on a better type of apple. So actually, just for an example for you guys, so right here are some, I think these are about 3-year-old apple tree seedlings. My plan is to probably dig these guys up this fall once they go dormant, and then I will replant them in different parts of the farm. And then what eventually though I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do something known as grafting. For those of you guys who don't know what grafting is, it's the process of taking a part of a plant and attaching it to a different plant that's related enough so that if you attach it the right way, it'll connect the two pieces of plant tissue together and they eventually grow as like one single organism. I would say that like 99%, probably even 99.9% of all the apples you've ever eaten in your entire life are the product of grafted trees. Like when you hear apple varieties like the Macintosh or Red Delicious or Granny Smith or Pink Lady or Honey Crisp, like any of those apple varieties that people typically buy at the store, they all actually originate with one specific tree that had one specific set of genetics. And the way that somebody's able to replicate the genetics of that tree is by the process of grafting, where you're cutting off a part of that one tree that grows that one type of apple and attaching it to the base of a different type of apple tree and letting that tree graft together and connect. And then it grows up in a way so that you're only producing that type of apple that you like. To give you guys an example, I'm gonna actually show you right here. Not that I'm actually gonna graft, because you typically wanna do your grafting in the spring, but this is like what grafting tends to look like. So I've just disconnected this apple tree branch and just strip off the leaves. So now typically when you're pruning your apple trees in the fall, you'll cut all of this extra wood, just like this piece that I cut here. And then this would be known as scion wood. And so this would be what you attach to a different tree. Another old piece of apple sticking down here. And so what I'm gonna try to do is just show you guys how those cuts work. You can learn skills of grafting and use a special grafting knife and like get really good at it. I've taken a course on it, and so I can do those other special grafts, but I actually find it's just much easier to use a grafting tool like the one I've got here. This grafting tool actually has like a little, like a shape attachment. So these little plates will actually like attach into the pruning shears that I have here. And this like shape that you see at the end of this tool will actually create a piece that can connect and graft. So now, for example, I'm just gonna cut right here. See how that has like a little V into it? The cut piece has the V too. Now you're gonna have those two little cut pieces just like that. You'll have this special grafting tape that you wrap around the graft, and it will give it a chance to heal, and then over time it will grow back in place as just one big tree branch. And so as I'm looking to graft these apple trees behind me, I will probably do lower grafts down below, and then those lower grafts are going to actually have like something probably smaller sticking out the top of it from scion wood that I get from another orchard place. And then that way, all the branches that grow up off the base of this tree beyond that one spot, they're going to all have that one desirable type of apple. And so when I sprout apple trees the way I do, I'm usually doing it for very cheap rootstock, so you're not spending like, I don't know, $10 or $20 per tree, and you only have to spend like, I don't know, I'm charging this year, I think it's $4 per apple seedling. So it works out pretty good. And so yeah, that is the update from the farm. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing how things are going. Short answer for me is I'm doing okay, I'm healing, but I got more to go. Oh, you guys like that, huh? There. Thanks for watching, everybody.